Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Haroon. Welcome to our second video with Shah Waliullah Dehlavi and his magnum opus, his masterpiece, the Hujjatullah al-Baligha. So in the previous video, I talked about how I want to just introduce a map, an overview of the book before we actually get involved in reading the text. And this will be useful because it allows you to see our journey beforehand. And there's a lot of things that Shah Waliullah will discuss, which to someone who's uninitiated, who's not familiar with some of the concepts that he's using, can seem quite confusing. So what I want to do in this video is just introduce what I call the theoretical foundations, and we'll continue doing this through the next few videos inshallah as well. So he, at the beginning of the book, when you open the first few pages, you'll see that Shah Waliullah lays the theoretical foundations for interpreting and applying the hadith. Okay, remember this book is all about understanding the prophetic statements. Okay, and it's all tied in with this idea of human purposefulness. We are created for a purpose, and the hadith guides us in fulfilling our purpose, our maqsad. Okay, and that's very, very important to bear in mind. So the hadith for Shah Waliullah Dehlavi is absolutely essential in understanding our purpose in life. Okay, and this is why he is credited with reviving and shifting the focus towards hadith, at least in the subcontinent or India, or what it was called before, Hind. That's very, very important to bear in mind as well. So in the early chapters, you'll find some important discussion on a metaphysical structure, and he ties this in with systems of experience. Okay, and so what he talks about at the beginning is that there are levels of systems, or there are level and systems which are in conflict with one another. There's this conflict between one side and the other. There's this imbalance, if you like. Okay, and so there's parts which are not harmonized, and so this must be harmonized. So I'm going this way across. This must be harmonized to achieve a balance, and that word balance is very, very important. Of course, these ideas are taken from scholars before him, like Ibn Arabi, Imam Sha'rani. Other scholars talk about this idea of balance, what's called the Mizan. Shah Waliullah doesn't really use that language too much, but it's there if you read it very, very carefully. So there's systems and levels of conflict. We need to harmonize all of that, and we need to bring balance and coherence to all of that as well. Okay, and so the higher purpose, we need to reach this higher purpose where we achieve this harmony and balance within the system. And once we reach this balance, we achieve this inherent perfection of what's called the ideal form implicit, whether that's in a person, a species, society, and so on. And he'll talk about this in the book as well. And so what happens is, once you have this inherent perfection here, right, and it's achieved, then you reach what's called maslaha kulliya, which is idea of this higher purpose. So everything, when there's harmony, everything is moving forward, everything is moving upwards. And this word maslaha kulliya appears time and time again, and it guides the entire universe towards progress through attaining harmony, and it makes conflict intelligible to us, right? And it gives it a religious significance. And so this idea of maslaha is very, very important. Shah Waliullah's ideas here, which is called beneficial purpose. This idea of maslaha, which is this idea of what the religion is going towards, what the religion guides us towards. And so maslaha is absolutely important to Shah Waliullah's work here as well. Okay, and it's a point of integration, because we need this natural order of things. So the maslaha is two things. Number one is there's a natural order of things, right? And there's also the sharia, which the sharia also intends to achieve. So there's this idea of order. So So you can see where all of this is going, right? We want to move towards order, and we want to move away from chaos, right? And this is very, very important. And like if you study the Hanafi school of law, for example, this is something that at a day-to-day level, the madhab, the school of law achieves or is seeking to achieve, which is that we don't want people fighting. We don't want systems fighting. We want society to function, right? And this is why we have ideas of schools of law, why we have ideas of judges, why we have ideas of qadi, why we have an imam, even the imam who leads the prayer, ways of reducing conflict and getting to a stage where we have order and we move away from chaos. And this idea of maslaha appears in other scholars as well. One of them is Malik ibn Anas, may Allah be pleased with him. And this comes in the idea of public interest, right? And so when a case is, for example, judged when there's no Islamic source. So what do you do? What do you do if you have a dispute and there's no Islamic source, primary source, that can guide you? Or Imam Ghazali's idea, which many of you will be familiar with, which is that the ultimate purpose of the Sharia is to maintain religion, life, offspring, reason, and propriety. So Shah Waliullah is taking these ideas from people, scholars before him. But Shah Waliullah means it in a specific way. When Shah Waliullah talks about maslaha, when he talks about this concept here, maslaha, he means it in a very broad sense, right? And he means it in the sense of benefit or purpose of the divine injunctions. So he means it in a broad sense. And this is why the hadith is very, very important. So it gives you an understanding of why God, Allah, has told us to follow commandments, right? Why He has sent prophets to us, why we need to follow revelation, and why we need a law. And the law isn't just for the sake of it, it's there to achieve a maslaha, a beneficial purpose. And at the highest level, the beneficial interest, the maslaha, is about achieving what's called maslaha kulliya. This maslaha kulliya that we just introduced before. Okay, that's the highest level. That's up at the highest level, which is a sort of like universal maslaha, if you like, of ordering the cosmos, of everything that exists. Okay, and so in his exposition of the wisdom, again, this word comes time and time again, which is wisdom. We'll come across this time and time again, and we call it hikmah. Okay, we call it hikmah. But the wisdom of the legal system, in particular the hadith corpus, for Shah Waliullah, it works at different levels, right? And so the hadiths, which we'll cover through inshallah in a lot more detail, they work at different levels. So when you read a hadith, Shah Waliullah will teach you where that hadith is to be placed. Okay, so he develops an understanding of layers of signification, which draws on the theories of Islamic legal law, linguistic, to do with language, and also to do with mysticism. So what he will do is he will bring all of this together. He will bring law, language, and also ideas to do with the soul of mysticism together, and to allow us to understand, to comprehend the hadith, the corpus of the hadith tradition. And he'll do this through symbols. And I'm not going to go into in too much detail, but this is something that's very much important in Shah Waliullah's sort of metaphysics. What do these symbols mean? When the Prophet says something, what is it symbolizing? What is it telling us? Okay, so that's very, very important to bear in mind. Now, I just want to move on a little bit for our purposes. In the first volume of Hujjatullah al-Baligha, you'll find there's a lengthy title here. I've written it down. في القواعد الكلية التي تستنبط منها المصالح المرعية في الأحكام الشرعية. And this is when he really starts to introduce his theory. And these are like general principles, قواعد كلية, which are التي تستنبط comes from the word button, right, which means like literally the stomach. So these are general principles which are derived the beneficial purposes, masalih mar'iyya, considered in the rulings of the divine law. There's a lot there to unpack. But basically, he's talking about these principles that you can derive from the Sharia, which are beneficial, right? The beneficial purposes of these rulings as well. So this is very, very important to bear in mind as well. There's 7 sections, there's 81 chapters that one needs to read. So a lot of theory, a lot of understanding is required. And what he does in the first volume is he lays out his metaphysical, psychological, sociological, and moral frameworks. Okay, so his whole system, if you want to understand his system, you have to understand this, you have to understand this: psychology, sociology, morality. All of these things are central to Shah Waliullah's system. I've called it his system, but I mean Shah Waliullah's system. Okay, this is very, very important to bear in mind. And later on, in the same volume, if you like, he talks about what's called the inner meanings of religious practice. So when we do religion, when we practice religion, when we pray, we give zakah, we fast, everything that we do in our religion, he will give you the inner meanings of it. But that can only be understood until if you've understood all of this. Okay, so I'm going to take you through that if Allah wills. Inshallah, together we can deepen our relationship with our Creator as well. So I hope you found that useful as a second video, where I'm just introducing slowly to you how we're going to approach this polymath, this genius with Shah Waliullah Dehlavi. In the next video, what I intend to do is just to give you some more detail of the first section. We haven't started reading the book. I'm hoping to read the book once I've set out the theory of Shah Waliullah Dehlavi. Hopefully that's been useful. As always, you can leave some comments behind. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.